Right now, as you sit or stand while watching this, your body is engaged in a silent, invisible struggle. It is a struggle you have been winning for decades, but it is one that begins to take a heavy, compound toll the exact moment you lie down to sleep. You see, your bed is currently demanding a tax from your heart. This is a tax you never agreed to pay, and it is slowly, quietly draining your vitality. Think about that for a second. For 8 hours every single night, you believe you are recharging. You believe your body is resting. But in reality, your cardiovascular system is fighting a losing battle against the laws of physics. Most people wake up in the morning feeling like a literal truck hit them. They drag themselves out of bed, struggling with swollen ankles and a thick, heavy sense of brain fog that takes 3 cups of coffee just to barely clear. They feel a racing pulse the moment their feet hit the floor. Usually, we just sigh, look in the mirror, and blame it all on getting older. We accept it as the cost of aging. But I am here to tell you that it is not just age. It is bad hydraulics. If you are over the age of 50, your internal piping, your vast network of arteries and veins simply isn't as flexible or resilient as it used to be. When you lie perfectly flat, you are essentially forcing your heart to push a heavy load uphill in the dark, all while your body's natural defenses and metabolic rates are at their absolute lowest. Now, what if I told you that by simply hacking the way gravity hits your body during those 8 hours, you could slash your risk of a nighttime vascular event by over 30%? We aren't talking about expensive pills, complicated prescriptions, or high-tech wearable gadgets. We are talking about pure, undeniable mechanical advantage. Today, I am going to walk you through the cardiac offload protocol. This is a precise, 3-step system designed to turn your bed from a high-pressure cooker into a high-performance recovery lab. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how to reposition your body to give your heart the night off it has been desperately begging for. Before we dive into the mechanics, I need you to prepare yourself to rethink everything you know about sleep hygiene. We have been told for generations that a firm, flat mattress is the absolute gold standard for rest. For an aging heart, that is a dangerous myth. Let's look at this differently and break down why your current sleep setup might be the very thing making you feel old. To understand why we need to hack gravity, we first have to understand what happens to your internal pipes as the years go by. The human vascular system is an engineering marvel, but it is subject to wear and tear. When we are in our 20s, our blood vessels are like brand new rubber garden hoses. They are stretchy, highly resilient, and fully capable of handling sudden, massive changes in pressure without a single problem. You could sleep upside down on a couch, and your young heart would easily adapt. But as we cross the threshold of 50 and 60, those pliable hoses start to become more like old, rigid PVC pipes. They get stiffer. They lose their snap. This is primarily due to a biological phenomenon called the nitric oxide crash. Nitric oxide is a miracle gas your body produced in abundance when you were younger. Its primary job is to keep your inner blood vessel walls smooth, relaxed, and wide open. However, as we age, our natural production of this vital gas plummets drastically. When you lie down flat on a standard mattress, you are suddenly putting those stiff, unyielding pipes under a massive amount of hydraulic stress. Think of the fluid dynamics. In a horizontal position, The blood that was once pooled safely in your lower extremities due to gravity throughout the day suddenly has nowhere to go but rushing back toward your chest and head. This creates what we call a volume surge. For a young, pliable heart, this is a minor, unnoticeable adjustment. For an older, stiffer heart, it is like a flash flood hitting a narrow, aging drainage system. This mechanical overload is exactly why so many people experience a dangerous spike in blood pressure the moment they try to relax for the night. Let me give you a real-world example. Consider the case of Gerald, a 62-year-old patient who came to me complaining of severe midnight palpitations. Gerald was a healthy guy. He golfed, he ate reasonably well, and he felt completely fine during the day. But the exact moment his head hit the pillow at night, he could hear his own heart thumping aggressively in his ears. He genuinely thought it was severe anxiety. It wasn't. It was his heart desperately struggling to process the sudden influx of fluid that occurs when the human body goes from a vertical standing position to a flat, horizontal one. His heart was essentially working harder at 2 a.m. than it was at 2 p.m. on the golf course. Now, let's look at this differently. If you were trying to drain a flooded basement in your house, you wouldn't try to push the heavy water across a perfectly flat floor. You would want a slope. You would want a drain. Your cardiovascular system is no different. When you sleep perfectly flat, your heart has to constantly work against the stagnant pressure of your own blood volume. Over the years, this leads to what medical professionals call nocturnal hypertension. This isn't just an annoyance, it is a primary, silent driver of morning strokes and heart attacks. Before we move on to the solution, consider this. The early morning hours, specifically between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., are when 72% of major vascular events occur. That is not a coincidence. That is the exact moment when your body's internal pressure, combined with the natural morning cortisol spike, reaches its ultimate breaking point after hours of flatbed strain. The nuance layer here, the pro tip that most people completely miss, is that your heart doesn't just pump blood. It manages pressure. If you don't give it a distinct mechanical advantage, it will eventually burn out its own motor. So, how do we fix these bad hydraulics? It starts long before you actually close your eyes. The first crucial step in the cardiac offload protocol is what I call the pre-flight fluid drain. This is arguably the most overlooked part of sleep hygiene in the modern world, yet it is the most critical biological trigger for preventing that racing heart feeling at midnight. Let's break down your day. From the moment you wake up, gravity is your enemy. As you walk, sit at a desk, or stand in the kitchen, gravity is relentlessly pulling fluid down into your feet, your ankles, and your calves. Even if you don't have visible, pitting swelling or diagnosed edema, your lower tissues are holding onto significant amounts of hidden interstitial fluid. It acts like a sponge soaking up water at the bottom of a bucket. When you suddenly lie flat in bed at 10 p.m., that trapped fluid doesn't just magically disappear. It rushes back into your central circulation like a tidal wave. Your heart looks at this sudden, massive 15% increase in blood volume, and it panics. It has to pump faster and harder to move that excess fluid through your kidneys so you can eventually filter it out into your bladder. This mechanical reality is exactly why so many people have to get up 2, 3, or 4 times a night to use the bathroom. You might think you just have a weak bladder, but in reality, your heart is literally trying to drain the swamp, while you are desperately trying to get some sleep. The move to fix this is incredibly simple. 20 minutes before you plan to go to bed, you need to deliberately get your heels above your heart. I want you to find a comfortable spot on the living room rug or your sofa. Prop your legs up against a wall, a heavy headboard, or a dense stack of firm cushions at a steep 45-degree angle. Now, this isn't just about relaxing at the end of the day. This is a highly active biological reloading phase. By doing this before you get into bed, you are forcefully initiating the fluid return while you are still awake and, critically, while your metabolic rate is still slightly higher. This mechanical reality is exactly why so many people have to get up 2, 3, or 4 times a night to use the bathroom. You might think you just have a weak bladder, but in reality, your heart is literally trying to drain the swamp while you are desperately trying to get some sleep. The move to fix this is incredibly simple. 20 minutes before you plan to go to bed, you need to deliberately get your heels above your heart. I want you to find a comfortable spot on the living room rug or your sofa. Prop your legs up against a wall, a heavy headboard, or a dense stack of firm cushions at a steep 45-degree angle. Now, this isn't just about relaxing at the end of the day. This is a highly active biological reloading phase. By doing this before you get into bed, you are forcefully initiating the fluid return while you are still awake and, critically, while your metabolic rate is still slightly higher. The science behind this is truly fascinating. By elevating the legs, you trigger something called the Gar-Henry reflex. This is an ancient survival reflex that tells your brain there is suddenly too much fluid in your central system. It immediately prompts your kidneys to start the heavy filtration process early. Instead of your heart violently fighting that flood at 3 a.m., your body gracefully processes it while you are still finishing your evening tea, watching the news, or reading a book. I have seen patients who are able to eliminate their midnight bathroom runs entirely simply by committing to this 20-minute pre-drain. The results are staggering. You wake up with visibly thinner ankles, a much calmer resting pulse, and far less puffiness in your face and under your eyes. It is exactly like clearing the train tracks before the freight train starts moving. Now that we have actively managed your fluid levels, let's talk about the biggest, most damaging mistake you are likely making every single night: sleeping on a perfectly level surface. I know we have been heavily marketed the idea of the flat back sleep for over a century. But as we just discussed, a flat bed is an anatomical disaster for an aging cardiovascular system. When you are horizontal, that nitric crash makes your arteries stiff, and your heart has to pump twice as hard to push blood through those narrow pipes against the dead weight of your own torso. The biological fix is what I call the golden angle. You need a continuous 15-degree torso lift. And I want to be very clear here. This isn't just about propping up your head. It is about elevating your entire upper body from the waist up. When you elevate the torso to a smooth 15 degrees, you completely flip the script. You are now using gravity as a powerful assistant rather than a relentless adversary. This slight, calculated incline allows the blood to flow much more easily away from the brain and the chest cavity. It actively prevents the pressure surge that causes those dangerous early morning vascular events we talked about. But here is where the vast majority of people get it completely wrong, and this is a critical nuance you cannot afford to skip. Please, for the sake of your vascular health, forget about using a haphazard pile of soft pillows. When you stack pillows under your head, you are only elevating your neck. This creates a severe kink in the hose. It aggressively compresses your carotid arteries, the main blood supply to your brain, and it restricts the very airway you desperately need to keep your blood oxygen levels up during deep sleep. If you frequently wake up with a dull headache, a stiff neck, or a dry mouth, you have likely been pillowing wrong for years. The tool you actually need is a high-density, full-torso foam wedge. Or, even better, heavy-duty bed risers that lift the actual frame of the bed right at the headboard. By elevating the entire mattress or using a long, firm wedge that starts cleanly at your hips, you ensure that your delicate spine remains a perfectly straight line, while your heart safely sits higher than your lower extremities. This 15-degree angle is the undisputed sweet spot in sleep medicine. It is steep enough to significantly reduce the mechanical workload on your heart, but not so steep that you will find yourself sliding down to the foot of the bed in the middle of the night. Think about this logically. If you had a mechanical pump in your garden that was struggling to push water through an old, calcified pipe, would you force the pipe to go uphill, or would you angle it slightly downhill to help the pump out? By using the 15-degree incline, you are creating a permanent downhill assist for the venous return draining from your brain. This directly reduces intracranial pressure. It allows your brain's glymphatic system, its internal waste-clearing mechanism, to flush out toxins efficiently. This is exactly why people who implement this protocol frequently report that their chronic morning brain fog completely vanishes within the very first week. Before we move on, I want to pull you back and remind you why we are doing this. We are not just talking about getting a slightly more comfortable night's sleep. We are talking about building a mechanical fortress against the 72% of strokes that strike in the early morning darkness. This incline is your absolute primary defense against that 4 a.m. pressure spike. But even with the perfect angle secured, there is still one more massive danger zone we have to carefully navigate: your side-to-side positioning. Let's talk about the biological danger zones of your actual sleep positions. Most of us have a default position. It's the one we unconsciously fall into the moment we get tired, without giving it a second thought. But for your heart, some of these familiar positions are the equivalent of trying to run a marathon while wearing a 50-pound weighted vest. First, let's permanently cross stomach sleeping off the list. If you sleep on your stomach, you are literally crushing your own lungs under the weight of your back. Worse, you are forcing your heart to physically beat against the hard resistance of the mattress. It is the absolute most inefficient, taxing way to breathe and circulate blood. Just don't do it. Then, there is the right side trap. While many people find rolling onto their right side incredibly comfortable, it actually creates a hidden mechanical nightmare. Sleeping on your right side physically kinks the inferior vena cava. This is the massive, vital highway of deoxygenated blood returning from your lower body back to your heart. Sleeping on your right side is exactly like stepping your full body weight on a garden hose while someone is trying to water the garden. It creates a massive backup of pressure that your heart has to forcibly overcome with every single solitary beat. The absolute insider secret for the cardiac offload protocol is what I call the left side lock. Why the left side? It comes down to pure anatomical design. Your heart's main, massive artery, the aorta, naturally curves up and to the left as it exits the heart to distribute fresh, oxygen-rich blood to the rest of your body. When you actively sleep on your left side, gravity actually pulls the blood down, helping it flow smoothly with the natural curve of the aorta. You are essentially opening up the fast lane for your circulation. This position drastically reduces something cardiologists call afterload, which is the sheer amount of pressure the heart must forcefully generate just to push blood out of its chambers. But to do this effectively, you need what I call the pro setup. You cannot just flop onto your left side like a rag doll and expect clinical results. You need two very specific supports to lock the skeleton in place. First, you need the hip align. You must place a firm, dedicated pillow squarely between your knees. This is absolutely vital because it physically stops your heavy upper pelvis from rotating forward and collapsing toward the mattress. When your pelvis rotates, it twists the large femoral arteries deep in your legs, which violently spikes vascular resistance. Keeping the knees perfectly stacked keeps those massive pipes wide open and flowing. Second, you need the rib support. I want you to take a small, rolled up hand towel or a dedicated lumbar roll and tuck it specifically under the curve of your left rib cage. Why? This prevents your mid-spine from sagging down into the mattress. When your spine sags, it physically compresses the chest cavity, putting heavy, bony pressure directly on the heart's outer casing. By supporting the ribs, you keep the cardiac box open, spacious, and stress-free. Now, let's look at this differently. Imagine your heart is a small, vital creature inside a cage, trying to breathe and expand. If you roll over and let your rib cage collapse on it, it has to violently struggle against the bars. If you prop the cage open and give it clear space, it can do its beautiful job with absolute minimal effort. This left side lock is the final masterful piece of the mechanical puzzle. It ensures that while you are comfortably resting at your 15-degree incline, every drop of blood in your body is moving through the path of least possible resistance. But before you rush out and buy a foam wedge and a knee pillow, we have to talk about the choke point. Because if you get this one specific detail wrong, you could actually end up doing far more harm than good to your brain and your heart. I have seen so many highly motivated, well-meaning people, patients just like Gerald, and another patient of mine named Shirley, try to implement these exact changes, only to come back to my office 2 weeks later feeling exponentially worse. Why does this happen? Because they fell face first into the pillow trap. They understood they needed an incline, but they tried to aggressively achieve it by just stacking 3 or 4 old, fluffy pillows under their head and shoulders. Here is the severe, hidden danger in doing that. When you stack pillows that aren't structurally firm and mathematically continuous, your heavy head sinks. Your chin inevitably gets aggressively tucked down toward your chest as the soft pillows shift during the night. This creates the ultimate choke point. When your chin is tucked deeply into your chest for 8 hours, you are physically compressing the internal jugular veins and the carotid arteries that are desperately trying to feed and drain your brain. Even worse, you are narrowing your primary airway, simulating the exact mechanics of obstructive sleep apnea. If you do this, you will wake up with a pounding, localized headache. You will experience extreme morning dizziness and a profound feeling of being hungover, despite not having had a single drop of alcohol the night before. This is the exact opposite of the vascular freedom we are trying to achieve. To survive and thrive with this protocol, the incline must be a smooth, consistent, unbroken ramp. It must travel from your hips all the way up to the crown of your head. Your cervical spine should remain in a neutral, straight line, not bent forward into a harsh C shape. If you feel even an ounce of tension in the back of your neck while lying down, your incline is either way too steep or your structural support is far too soft. The end goal is to feel completely weightless, not awkwardly propped up in a hospital bed. Another incredibly common mistake is completely ignoring the lower half of your body once you get the upper incline right. Some people find that when they elevate their torso, gravity pulls the blood down and it starts to pool heavily in their hips and thighs. This is exactly why that left side block with the firm pillow between the knees is non-negotiable. It keeps the blood dynamically moving through the pelvis. Furthermore, if you feel a strange, throbbing sensation in your calves or legs while resting on the wedge, it is a glaring red flag. It means you skipped step 1. You didn't do the 20-minute pre-flight drain long enough before getting into bed. Consider this pro tip to manage your expectations. Your complex nervous system takes roughly 7 to 10 full days to biologically adjust to a brand new hydraulic setup. The very first night is going to feel strange. It might even feel a little frustrating. You might wake up to find yourself having rolled entirely off the wedge onto the flat mattress. That is perfectly okay. Your proprioception, which is your brain's subconscious map of where your body is located in physical space, needs time to recalibrate to the new angles. Do not give up after one awkward night. Remember, we are actively undoing decades of ingrained, damaging flat sleep habits. Before we move into our final recap and lay out the 30-day challenge, I want you to remember a hard truth. The massive pharmaceutical industry does not make billions of dollars when you finally understand basic physics. They make their money when you are forced to buy a daily pill to artificially lower the systemic pressure that gravity and bad mechanics are causing in the first place. But pills do not fix bad hydraulics. They merely mask the screaming symptoms of a struggling system. By strictly using the cardiac offload protocol, you are bypassing the pharmacy and addressing the absolute root mechanical cause of nighttime heart strain. We have covered a massive amount of physiological ground today. But when you strip away the medical jargon, it all boils down to one undeniable, simple truth. Your heart has been working devastating overtime for years, and it is high time you finally gave it the night off. You now hold the exact mechanical blueprint to stop violently fighting gravity and start brilliantly using it as a tool for deep vascular recovery. Let's do a final, rapid-fire recap of the cardiac offload protocol so you can start tonight. First, you must perform the pre-flight fluid drain. Exactly 20 minutes before you get into bed, get those heels up against a wall or couch at a steep 45-degree angle. Let your kidneys do the heavy, demanding lifting while you are still fully awake and your metabolism is active. Second, establish the golden angle. Invest in a high-quality 15-degree torso wedge, or use heavy blocks to lift the head of your bed frame. Stop the dangerous morning pressure surge by giving your struggling heart a permanent, physiological downhill assist. Third, lock into the left-lateral aorta open position. Anchor yourself onto your left side. Place a firm pillow squarely between your knees to protect your pelvis, and tuck a small support roll under your ribs. Keep the grand highway to your heart wide open and free of twisting resistance. I am officially challenging you right here, right today, to the 30-day Vessel Reset Challenge. I absolutely do not want you to just take my word for it. I want you to see the undeniable data for yourself in your own body. So, I have to ask, are you finally ready to stop being a silent victim of the gravity tax? If you are stepping up and taking the 30-day challenge, I want to hear about it right now. Reach out down in the comments below, type "I'm in," and let's passionately track these vascular wins together as a community. Thank you for your time.